Once upon a time in a beautiful city called Verona, lived two very important families. One family was the Montagues, and the other was the Capulets. Both families were rich and powerful, and they lived in big, beautiful houses. The Montagues had a handsome son named Romeo. He was a dreamer who often felt sad about love. The Capulets had a lovely daughter named Juliet. She was young and full of life, not yet thinking about marriage. These two young people were the stars of our story, but they had no idea what fate had in store for them. They lived in the same city, but their worlds were kept far apart. The biggest problem in Verona was that the Montagues and the Capulets were enemies. This was not a small disagreement, it was a very old and very angry feud. Nobody could even remember how the fighting started, but it had been going on for a very long time. The families hated each other so much that they would fight in the streets whenever they met. The Prince of Verona was very tired of all the fighting. He had warned both families that if they caused any more trouble, they would be punished severely. This angry feud was like a dark cloud hanging over the city, making everyone feel unsafe and unhappy. Romeo was a Montague, and he spent his days sighing and feeling heartbroken over a girl named Rosalind who did not love him back. His friends, like the funny and clever Mercutio, tried to cheer him up. They told him there were many other beautiful girls in Verona. One day they heard about a big party being held at the Capulets' house. Romeo's friends thought it would be a great idea to sneak into the party. They said he could wear a mask so no one would recognize him. They hoped that seeing all the beautiful ladies at the feast would help Romeo forget all about Rosalind. Juliet, on the other hand, was a Capulet. Her parents were planning for her future and wanted her to marry a handsome and noble man named Paris. Juliet was not very excited about this idea because she had never even met Paris. She felt she was too young to think about love and marriage. Her mother and her kind nurse tried to convince her that Paris would be a wonderful husband. Juliet agreed to meet him at the family's big party that night, but she promised only to look at him and see if she could like him. She had no idea that this party would change her life forever in a way no one could have ever imagined. So Romeo and his friends put on their masks and snuck into the Capulets' grand party. The house was filled with music, dancing, and laughter. While looking around the crowded room, Romeo's eyes landed on a girl who was more beautiful than anyone he had ever seen before. He forgot all about Rosalind in an instant. This girl was Juliet. He felt his heart beat faster and knew he had to meet her. He walked over to her and, even without knowing her name, he spoke to her with sweet words. Juliet was charmed by this mysterious young man in a mask, and she felt a spark too. Their magical moment was soon interrupted. Juliet's hot-headed cousin Tybalt recognized Romeo's voice. He was furious that a Montague, an enemy, had dared to come to their party. He wanted to start a fight right away, but Lord Capulet, Juliet's father, stopped him. He did not want any trouble to ruin his feast. Later, after their first dance and a stolen kiss, Romeo and Juliet both learned the terrible truth. He was a Montague, and she was a Capulet. They had fallen in love with their greatest enemy. Their hearts were filled with both joy and despair. Unable to go home after the party, Romeo climbed over the wall into the Capulets' orchard. He hid in the shadows below a balcony, hoping to see Juliet again. Just then, Juliet appeared on the balcony above. She thought she was all alone and began to speak her thoughts out loud to the stars. She spoke of her love for Romeo and wished he was not a Montague. Romeo, listening from below, could not stay silent any longer. He stepped out of the darkness and spoke to her. They talked for hours, sharing their love and realizing it was true and deep, despite their family's hatred. Before they said goodnight, Romeo and Juliet made a secret plan. They knew they could not be together openly, so they decided to get married in secret. They believed that their love was strong enough to overcome the feud between their families. The very next day, Romeo went to see his friend Friar Lawrence. The friar was a kind man who knew a lot about plants and herbs. He was shocked to hear that Romeo had forgotten Rosalind so quickly, but he agreed to marry the young lovers. He hoped that their marriage might be the one thing that could finally bring peace to the feuding families. With the help of Friar Lawrence and Juliet's loyal nurse, the secret wedding took place. For a brief moment, Romeo and Juliet were filled with happiness. They were husband and wife, and they hoped their love would build a bridge between their families. But their happiness did not last long. Later that same day, the hot summer streets of Verona became the scene of a terrible fight. Tybalt, still angry about Romeo crashing the party, found Romeo and his friends. He challenged Romeo to a duel, calling him a villain. Romeo, now married to Juliet, refused to fight her cousin. Romeo's best friend Mercutio could not understand why Romeo was backing down. He thought Romeo was being a coward, so he drew his own sword to fight Tybalt instead. Romeo tried to step between them to stop the fight, but it was too late. Tybalt stabbed Mercutio under Romeo's arm, and Mercutio fell to the ground, fatally wounded. Filled with grief and rage over his friend's death, Romeo forgot his promise to love the Capulets. He fought Tybalt, and in his anger, he killed him. The happy day had turned into a nightmare of violence and loss. When the Prince of Verona heard what had happened, he was very angry. He had promised that anyone who fought in the streets would be put to death. However, because Tybalt had killed Mercutio first, the prince showed a little mercy. Instead of death, Romeo was banished from Verona. He was forced to leave his home, his family, and his new wife, Juliet. The news was devastating for the young couple. They had only been married for a few hours, and now they were being torn apart. They spent one last secret night together, before Romeo had to flee the city at dawn. While Juliet was weeping for her banished husband, her parents made things even worse. They thought her tears were for her cousin Tybalt. To cheer her up, they decided she must marry Paris right away. They arranged the wedding for Thursday, just a few days away. Juliet was horrified. She was already married to Romeo. She begged her parents to cancel the wedding, but they would not listen. Her father became very angry and threatened to disown her if she disobeyed. Feeling trapped and desperate, Juliet ran to Friar Lawrence for help, not knowing where else to turn. Friar Lawrence came up with a very risky plan to help Juliet. He gave her a special sleeping potion. He explained that this potion would make her seem dead for 42 hours. Her family would find her, believe she was gone, and place her in their family tomb. While she was sleeping, the friar would send a letter to the banished Romeo. The letter would explain the whole plan. Romeo could then return to Verona in secret, be there when Juliet woke up in the tomb, and they could run away together to live happily ever after. It was a dangerous plan, but it was Juliet's only hope. Trusting the friar, Juliet went home and agreed to marry Paris. That night she drank the potion and fell into a deep, death-like sleep. The next morning her family found her and were overcome with grief. Just as the friar predicted, they laid her to rest in the Capulet family tomb. But a terrible misunderstanding was about to happen. The friar's letter never reached Romeo. Instead, Romeo's servant, who had seen Juliet's funeral, rushed to tell Romeo the news. All he knew was that Juliet was dead. Romeo, heartbroken and filled with despair, believed his beloved wife was truly gone forever. Hearing this terrible news, Romeo decided he could not live without Juliet. He bought a fast-acting poison from a poor apothecary, and rushed back to Verona one last time. He went to the Capulet tomb to see his wife one last time and die beside her. At the tomb he found Paris, who was there to mourn Juliet. They fought and Romeo killed Paris. Then he went inside the tomb, saw Juliet's still body, drank the poison, and died. Just moments later Juliet began to wake up from her long sleep. She saw the friar who had just arrived, and then she saw her beloved Romeo lying dead beside her. Seeing Romeo's empty poison cup, Juliet understood what had happened. She refused to leave the tomb with the friar. She wanted to be with her husband. She saw Romeo's dagger, took it, and ended her own life, falling beside him. When the families and the prince arrived, they found the three young people dead. The friar explained the whole tragic story of secret love and misunderstanding. Seeing their children lying together, the Montagues and the Capulets finally realized the terrible price of their hatred. They agreed to end their long feud and build golden statues to honor the children whose love was destroyed by their hate. The story of Romeo and Juliet is a sad reminder that hate only leads to sorrow, while love and peace are far more precious.